All right. Welcome everybody to the first longitudinal survey and REDCap workshop. My name is Andrea. I'm a research scientist and faculty with our Lifespan Biostatistics core. And so the structure for today, essentially, let me advance this slide. So I have some slides. So we're going to go through setting up longitudinal projects in REDCap, and I have a brief activity that you are welcome to work through. That we're going to kind of break up the longitudinal component from the survey component of today's class, and then we've got opportunity at the end for Q&A. I encourage folks to feel free to pop questions in the chat as we go through. I just ask that while we're going through the slides that you keep your self on mute, just because we are recording for the purposes of being able to post this to our Advance-CTR YouTube page afterward. We will pause the recording during the brief activity as well as the Q&A, so you can feel free to unmute yourself at that time. So the topics we'll be discussing today are creating instruments with REDCap shared library, longitudinal settings that can be applied both with and without surveys. I'll show you how to apply them more broadly, and then when we bring the surveys, you'll see how the surveys layer onto that. Just a nod to kind of the how surveys work versus the data capture forms. Showing you some survey settings, how to distribute for public versus individual links, automated survey invitations, and survey queue. Note that everybody in this class, if you didn't already have a REDCap account, our Jeff Richardson, who's on today's call as well, has given you temporary access to the Lifespan REDCap. So you can follow along with me as I go through these slides. And again, after we go through the longitudinal slides, there will be an opportunity for you to try out some of these longitudinal tools yourself in the REDCap. But I have created my slides such that you could follow along with me if you want right now as well. So this essentially, if you want to pop into your REDCap, create a new project under the Just for Fun heading. I called my project Longitudinal Study of Work and Health, and we'll walk through these pieces together. Note that after today's talk, you'll be receiving an email from Alexia with a PDF of these slides, as well as a link to our feedback survey. Because this is the first offering of this course and we're trying out a slightly new format here, I'd love to hear your thoughts about what worked, what didn't work, and any input you want to give us would be wonderful. Okay. So the first thing we want to do, so if you're following along with me, awesome. If you're not, you'll have a chance to do this later, is right when you create that new project, the thing that pops up is the project setup screen. And you're going to go ahead and enable the longitudinal data collection, which will be the first thing we're going to work with today in this class, as well as the survey option here. And just as a reminder, the default settings are for this to be a non-longitudinal or a cross-sectional study setup, and for the default for data capture is that you're entering it yourself as study staff. If you hit enable here, it allows you to have the additional functionality for participants to be submitting surveys. So the next thing that we want to look at on here is we're going to, instead of creating a instrument from scratch, we're actually going to go into the REDCap shared library. This is a cool tool, and it's actually a brand new one that has come on since I made this slide, but we're going to focus today on the REDCap shared library, where you can pull in instruments that have been created by others. So if you were to click on this link right here, it would bring you to the REDCap shared library, which is keyword searchable. For instance, I typed in PHQ here, and you can see what pops up for PHQ. In this shared library, so you'll notice there are some things that have little stars next to them, those are instruments that REDCap has gone and vetted. They've already gone through to make sure that you know, that variables are labeled in a consistent fashion and whatnot. And you can even read up more about their coding guidelines by going to their C guidelines link here. But this could be helpful, you know, if you're using a measure that you know is already a standardized, validated measure that others have used, you know, like the Generalized Anxiety Disorder 7 scale or the Audit C or something that that's already out there. There's a good chance that REDCap already has it in its library. And instead of you having to recreate this instrument, you can just download it from the library. So what you would do, so in this case, I want to pull in the Generalized Anxiety Disorder 7 item. So I just select it and I import it into my REDCap project. It pops up some information about, you know, the what's the word I'm looking for, permissions and the rules behind using it. Like, you're not supposed to, you can make modifications to change, you know, how it looks in terms of colors and whatnot in your survey, but you really shouldn't be changing the content in them if you're using these survey items from the REDCap shared library. Okay, so we've gone ahead and added an instrument to our survey. This is going to, right now we're in longitudinal setup. We want to make this a something that we have people at multiple time points answering the same instrument. So we can go into the next option here on our project home, which is define my event. So this is where we'll set up our time points for data capture will occur. And what you'll do is, so you'll see when you first log in, it will only have the very first event, which you can change the name of. In this case, I've changed it to baseline. And you can add as many new events as you like. So let's say, for instance, you are going to have a baseline visit, you know, a 14-day visit, and a 30-day visit. You can create these event names. You can tell it how many days apart these are. This part is more relevant if you're, I think, if you're going to be actually, you know, scheduling participants to come in to the clinic or something, where you actually want to make use of the calendar feature, which I'll show you in a second. You don't necessarily have to build in the times on here if you're just sending surveys out, because there's a separate feature for that. But this is, I want to show you both because people are coming to this class for a multitude of reasons. So if you are having folks come into the clinic to answer survey items or what have you at multiple time points, this would be what you would do. So you'll note on here that you can set a little offset range on sort of the timing of the subsequent visits to account for, you know, for instance, like overlap with weekends and whatnot. So you can add those in here. We put plus and minus 2 days here. This is what we're calling those events. And then just note right here, this unique event name that REDCap is creating. So for folks, you know, you've used, you're familiar with how, or hopefully you've gained some familiarity through your previous work with REDCap, that when you call in variables and non-longitudinal settings, you know how you call the variable name in by putting the name in brackets. Now when you're using longitudinal setting, you also want to be calling in the event name, which I'll show you an example of this in a second. But I just want to point out where the event name lives. This is what we're referring to. And again, I am going to make sure that you all have these slides when you leave today. So after we've defined our events, the next thing we want to do is designate which instruments are going to be on those events. So I want to designate, you know, my first instrument, which is the instrument that REDCap automatically creates for you the moment you create a brand new project without adding anything to it. A demographics instrument that I have in here, and then the Generalized Anxiety Disorder 7 item. All of those are being administered at baseline, and maybe I only want the Generalized Anxiety Disorder item to be administered at subsequent visits, but these other two we're just going to have at the first visit. And then we just save those changes. The next thing we want to do, if we're not using just sending surveys out and we actually want to have people come in the clinic, or we're calling people up on the telephone on set times, we can enable the scheduling feature. So this is located, right on that project setup page, right below defining your events. We'd click this scheduling module for longitudinal only. Once you do that, on the left-hand side of your screen, you should see this scheduling piece appear right here on your data collection. If you click this scheduling link, you'll get this option. So what you can do, so if you're creating a brand new participant, you've got a couple options. One, you can either choose an existing record if you've already got some people that you've enrolled and you just haven't created a schedule for them yet, or you could just create a brand new schedule. So if you hit this generate new schedule option, it's going to create a new participant entry in here, and it's going to give you automatically, so it'll be based on today's date for the baseline, and it will automatically, based on the information you gave it before about 14 days out for that 14-day visit, and then 30 days out for that 30-day visit, it'll give you a proposed time already for you. It's already built in here for the date, and then you can enter specific time, like hour time, if you want here as well. It'll see how it tells you the days of the week on here as well, so it'll warn you if it's falling on the weekend as well. So once you've done that, if you were to click the record status dashboard, now we'd see that we've got a person ready to go in here. We haven't entered any of the data in here yet for this person, but you can see that they've got, a demographics and generalized anxiety disorder screener at baseline, and then they have the generalized anxiety disorder screener again at 14 days and 30 days. If we were to go to the calendar function on our applications tool, now you can see that our calendar is also populating with information about this person. So you can see it's got the record number corresponding to that person and which visit it is for them. If I had entered the hour of the day that they were arriving as well, that information would also show up here. So you'd be able to see, when your participants are coming in for what visit and whatnot. If we were to click on one of these, we can modify this stuff. We can, so let's say, for instance, this was the plan we set out to do, but now we need to call our participant to make sure that that time's going to work for them. You can change the date in here, confirm it, cancel it, whatever you need to do. Okay, so that's the first part of this. That's the longitudinal features that will operate with or without survey features. So I wanted to take a moment. We'll pause the recording momentarily here. Where is? Okay. All right, so now that you have the longitudinal feature, let's layer on some survey. So first off, just a distinction between the surveys and the data forms. So with the data forms, this is what you're using when you're not using the survey functionality. So you have to, in order to enter data in REDCap, be an authorized REDCap user for this instance of REDCap. And it's data entry performed by study staff. Each person who's entering the data needs to be granted access by the person who owns the project. And it's oftentimes the person who's entering the data will also have access to the other data that's been entered in there, and the ability to change different aspects of the project. And they've got the ability to mark the forms as complete and whatnot. So this is what we're doing, if we're abstracting records medical record data, if we're doing telephone call interviews, what have you. If you have a REDCap account and you're entering data via the REDCap account, that's what we're doing with the data forms. In contrast, with surveys, this does not require the participant to log in. The data entry is performed by the participant, and it can be done in a way that is anonymous, or they can have an individualized link that is synced up to them so that we can have them inputting data at multiple points in time. All completed surveys have a date and a timestamp that can be included in reports and exports. It's easier to enter responses from a smartphone or a tablet. There is a sleek interface that can be customized with logos and instructions. It's configurable, automated reminders for participants to complete surveys, and we can also even enable optional notifications when surveys are completed. So that's kind of like a summary of some of those survey features. So when we got going, if you were following along with me at the start with our longitudinal worker and health project there, we had enabled surveys at the start. I'm going to show you both sort of the public link interface as well as the individual link interface. So to do this, so let's go ahead and, if you were with me from the start, let's add an email address to the first instrument here. This is that instrument that REDCap creates for you automatically that has the record number in it. I also, in the process of doing this, renamed this instrument to roster, R-O-S-T-E-R. When you add your email address, you want to make sure that you tell REDCap that you're giving it an email address with the text validation feature here. This will come into play momentarily. I also, at the same time as adding the email address, if I'm having a roster of people that I'm drawing from or what have you, I like to add the first and last name in here. This is useful. So if in the survey, there's the ability for you to pipe in stuff like the person, you might say, for instance, dear Sarah Andrea, thank you for completing our survey. So this is information like this can be piped in for the respondent to see, in the survey itself and the emails that are automatically sent to the respondent if you're collecting the data and including it in your instrument. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to click the button. You set enable. Once you click it, it turns into this little check mark. But we're going to enable the GAD7 instrument. When you do that, you're going to get a bunch of survey options. So the first thing, this is the where you have the option to change the title of the survey if you wanted to. You can change the survey text. This is where you can pipe stuff in, like their first name and last name. So you'll note here, there's a couple new features here that I've added, the baseline _arm_1. That's the name of the event that was automatically generated by REDCap when I added in my additional event information. When you're dealing with longitudinal data in REDCap, you're going to, when you're piping things or you're using the variables as conditional statements in different features in REDCap, you're going to have to let REDCap know both the variable name and like when that variable name is from, especially with these things that sometimes you have being asked at multiple time points, the same question. So I'm just telling it that I'm asking for the first name and the last name that were measured at baseline arm1. And now whatever is put in the baseline arm1 for name will be piped into the survey. You can customize your survey to include things like the logos. You can change the way the buttons look. You can change the fonts and the colors. Make it how you like to look. You can change whether or not you want numbering. It's up to you. You can change. So sometimes, depending on how long the survey is, you might want to change this feature so that after every, if you don't want them to have to keep on scrolling down, we'd rather have them answer a question and then have it automatically advance to the next question with the next button. You can change what's specified here. It's up to you if you want to enable them to download a PDF. If you are doing, if you want to have individual survey links sent to folks, this is an area where you can specify the email field variable. So this is where we can select the variable we created in our roster instrument. And that's where REDCap will pull from to email folks. And these are all just additional features that you can toggle on if you want. So you can make required fields, display things in red, allow respondents to see results. This functionality right here is helpful for accessibility. So you can make it so that they have the ability to turn on the text-to-speech functionality if they want to. And then these are just some additional parameters you can set. You know, sometimes, you know, if you've got a max number of surveys you're accepting, you can set this stuff. I haven't really had to use this for the projects that I've been on, but different folks experience different cases for their projects. If you had multiple instruments that you were using, let's say that you're for instance, emailing out, you want people to complete the Audit C and the GAD7 and the PHQ-15 all in the same survey, you can set it up so that they'll automatically have each instrument presented to them once they've kind of gone through the instrument that they just completed. It's just a feature you can enable if need be. And then these two pieces right here will show, you know, after the person submits their survey, they can either be redirected to a website, like if you have a department website or a study website you want to send them to, you could have them put that link there and it'll just direct them to that, or have a little message to them. And then this harkens back to the e-consent framework, which today is not the focus of, but if there are questions, we do have Jeff Richardson on the line as well today, that he'll be able to help me answer some of those questions if they come up. All right. So we have created our survey, we've enabled it as a survey and added some features to it. The next thing we want to do is make it so that when people complete the survey, you get a notification if you want. So this is right in that you know, instrument, data collection instrument area on REDCap. So you'd click survey notifications, and anyone who's on this project with you, you can set it up so that they receive notifications by email if you want for survey responses. So since we designated an email field in creating the survey, the tools are currently set up for individual survey links and not public survey distribution. Although I'm going to show you a way in which you might want to use both. But if you have been following along with me on this, you will be directed, you know, right off the bat to the this individual survey link here with a participant list. But let's consider the following scenario. So let's say that you're interested in, you know, first having an interested person click on a public link, like perhaps you are advertising your survey on a listserv or on Facebook or something, and you want interested participants to fill out their contact information. And then maybe, you know, study staff contacts the person, determines if they're eligible, consents, and then would enter some data in your baseline instrument. And that at that moment, the person is then set up to automatically receive subsequent surveys by email at set time points. So let's say that we want the public survey for recruitment. Study staff is verifying, and then step 3 now for the long haul, we're going to have them automatically receiving GAD7 at baseline, at 14 and 30 days. So to do this, all we have to do is, so we can go back to our roster instrument and create and turn this into sort of a our little subject recruitment instrument. And it could just be a matter of, are you interested in our study? Yes, no. If so, you know, let's put your information, and we'll someone will get back to you if you're eligible. So I've just gone ahead and added an extra button to the roster, just asking if you're interested in being contacted to see if you're eligible for a study. And then I go ahead and enable this as a survey. And I'm just going to tell folks, thank you for your interest in our study. Please provide your contact information, and a study team member will reach out to you shortly. With this survey, I do not attach the email to it because I want this to be a public survey. So I won't have an email at this juncture. This is when they're going to give me the email. If you do that, now you'll be able to see this tool. You'd be able to see this public survey tool if you hadn't already gone through and set up your longitudinal features. This is kind of the default survey option, is to have access to the public survey link. But once you enable the longitudinal features, you get some warnings from REDCap, just because with the longitudinal features, well, I'll get into that in a second, why there's a little, it really depends on what your question is and your aims are for your project, whether or not you want to use the public survey or the individual links or some combination of the two. But do note here that we've got a lot of features with public surveys as well, and I'm happy we can walk through your specific scenario and whatnot in the Q&A. I'm happy to help triage your specific project issues and questions. So public versus individual survey links. So public links, they can be anonymous. Individual, they can't. And then, of course, the flip side of this being that, so with public surveys, we can't prevent duplicate entries from the same person, while you can from individual. And if you're doing something where you want to be able to link data from multiple time points, you really can't do that with a public survey. You need to make that an individual survey. So if you're doing, for instance, you're examining the impact of a new course elective on perceptions around LGBTQ health. For instance, if you want to see, if there's a change in knowledge and comfort and whatnot pre versus post in the same people, you would need to use individual links and could not use the public links. So back to our scenario, step one, we were interested in recruiting publicly from Facebook or what have you. Step two, we've got our study staff consenting folks entering things in the baseline instrument. And step three, we want to now reach out to these folks automatically at baseline, 14 days, and 30 days with the survey. And what that looks like in our instrument here is that, so this roster right here is where the interested people are providing their contact information in a publicly linked survey. This demographics tab is one that our study staff are entering data in REDCap while they're talking to the person on the phone or in the clinic or what have you. And this last one, we want this to be automatically sent to participants at defined times. All right, so since we're basing our automated survey invitations on time since baseline, we're going to add a variable to that data capture form that the study staff will be entering in, where they can put the date that they're talking to the person. So here, you want to make sure that you specify that it is a date that you're giving REDCap with one of the validation date features. So I'm just going to put here date baseline data collected. This is the first step for allowing us to create automated invitations for surveys. All right, so now that we've done that, we can go ahead and generate some automated invitations. So when I click this, you'll see that because I've already told REDCap what my events are called, baseline, 14 days, and 30 days. You can see that I've got the option to set up the automated invitations for any of those. When I click that, I've got a lot of stuff that I can manipulate in here. So this first one right here, so step one, depending on who else you have in your project, you'll see potentially additional emails in here that you could have it from, but just note that generally when they send the automated survey links to your participants, they're going to see the name the email that you use as your REDCap login. You might, depending on how big your study is and whatnot, create like a study-specific email or something you could have in here. But you can update the subject heading on here, update the message you're sending them as much as you like. So again, anything in brackets is going to be information that's piped in. So again, the first name and the last name is being entered in the baseline ARM1 event. So I want to make sure that I'm telling REDCap where exactly to pull that data from. It automatically gives you this stuff right here, which you can update if you like, but just make sure that you don't take out the bracket survey link here, because this is what REDCap automatically will pipe in that person's individualized survey link. Over here, I'm just going to toggle on that I want them to be eligible to receive invitations, once they've created their baseline form or completed their study interest form. However, they're not going to get their very first one until it's the date of their baseline visit as entered by the study staff in that baseline visit entry form there. And then over here, I would, you just make it active. Now, you're welcome to, just save this and then manually update the 14-day and 30-day invitations in the same way as you did this. Or if you do the save and copy button and copy it to, both the 14-day and the 30-day here, it makes things go a lot faster, because you probably have taken some time to really customize what your email says and yada, yada. So go ahead and copy those to the 14-day and the 30-day. And then you can just modify them to your updated specifications. So we would modify the 14-day to say 14 days after the date our study staff entered in that baseline visit. And the 30-day one we modify to be 30 days. But other than that, it's the same subject heading, the same email they're getting, the same email address going out, etc. Lastly, the most important thing to do once you've done this, especially now that we're wrangling in all these complicated things, is to test your project thoroughly. And you could even test my project out along with me if you wanted to by going to this link, because this is now a live survey here. So step one, I want an interested person to click on the public link and provide contact information in the roster. So I clicked on this link, I filled out the form here, and I have it going to my email. Then step two is that the study staff contacts that person, determines the eligibility and consents, and enters their information in the baseline demographics instrument. So I click on demographics. I make sure that I fill out their form, most importantly, the date baseline data collected here. And what do you know? I get an email that's letting me know that the investigator, it's got my name piped into it. Investigators want me to complete this survey. The survey link's already automatically piped into it. And in REDCap, we can also see when my next survey links are being sent out. That I have it, I've got another one coming in 14 days and another one coming in 30 days. So it's good. So this is a good way to see that everything is working the way it should. And that is the extent of sort of the planned material for this. This next juncture, I am going to open it up for questions, but just note that we have a lot of support here for REDCap. You are always welcome to send your technical or non-technical questions to the REDCap support@lifespan.org email address. where we have our REDCap gurus, Jeff Richardson and Meg Millett on the line there to help you out. Depending on what stage of your research planning you are in, if you are in data management and you've got kind of your study hashed out already, you just need some help with REDCap and thinking things through, you can always make an appointment with Meg Millett or Jeff Richardson. If you're still in the process of plotting things out, I encourage you to reach out to me. We've got just some notes that, our REDCap here at Lifespan is supported by our Lifespan Information Services. There are many online training videos that can support you with these aspects of REDCap, both provided by us and others all around the world. Lots of online documentation provided both by REDCap and other institutions. And I do have a list of some of these the more helpful resources on our lifespanbiostatisticscore.org/REDCapBits website that you're welcome to go to. And then there's even more resources curated at the brown.edu initiatives, translational research, REDCap link as well. So at this juncture, I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to stop the recording. And